today, everyone, we're joined by Linda and Laura. So Linda is basically the co-founder of Viva, and then there's Laura, who's the founder of Healthzilla. There's no reason why I chose these two women, except for the fact that they're really beautiful, and they are also exemplary women leaders in their industry. I'm going to allow themselves to actually introduce them. So Linda, why not you go first?
Sure. Hi guys, I'm Linda. I'm an Australian-born Chinese, meaning that I grew up in Australia. I've been in Asia, in Singapore specifically, for over a decade now. I can't believe the time has flown. I started out in corporate in FMCG in brand management, and then had that entrepreneurial itch and went and started the first boutique bar studio in Singapore, and then later on expanded to Hong Kong with my partner Annabelle. So that's about 5 years ago, and now we're going strong with multiple locations in Singapore. And yeah, like a full brand and lifestyle choice, going from classes to instructor training to retreats, and just, you know, aiming to show up and empower people to be stronger and be fitter, and yeah, I just feel empowered from physical and mental.
Wow, nice. Thanks, Linda. Thanks for the brief introduction. I've tried Viva classes myself. I'm a strong advocate for Viva instructor trainee course as well as their classes, and they are amazing. Let's move on to Laura. So Laura, tell me more about what Healthzilla does.
Sure. So hi guys, I'm Laura. I'm actually originally from Finland, so really far away. I've been living in Asia for the past 6 years. And I started, so I have a long history in the corporate world, in very technical roles, big tech projects in Europe. But since we moved to Singapore about 6 years ago, I actually found that I wanted to do something more social. So the tech scene wasn't really, you know, it didn't feel purposeful enough. So I set up my own sole proprietorship for the first 3 years because I wanted to learn how to do business in Asia, how to, you know, build my network and prepare myself for the actual, I would say, tech startup scene. And then about 3 years ago, I founded Healthzilla, which is, I would say, a data-driven health tech company. So we aggregate a lot of health data, and then I would say, make sense of it. So we built automated insights and recommendations based on your wearable data, your data coming from different health and fitness and nutrition, mindfulness apps, and whatever other smart devices you might have. So that's in essence what we do. And I would say why this feels so right for me right now is sort of the purposefulness that I mentioned in the beginning. So our big vision is to actually democratize health, because we feel with the team that it's not really, we're not making smart use of the data that we gather right now, and we could automate a lot of the things, give people really intelligent insights about how to improve their health and well-being. Mm-hmm. So that's me in a nutshell.
Nice. Thanks, Laura. Thanks. Before we actually move into the main part of the conversation, I think one question that we fail to ask anybody during a podcast, during a TV show, during even live conversations is that, how are you guys doing during this epidemic? How's everything with you guys? You know, Laura, you can start first.
Yeah, well, I'm actually pretty okay. So fortunately, my company hasn't been hit by COVID. We can still operate. I mean, you know, I miss the office. Sarah, you've been to our office. It's amazing.
It's amazing.
So
yeah.
I miss that. I miss, you know, meeting with people. I miss having lunch. I in general, I miss people. And obviously my kids are super bored being at home. But then again, you know, I've utilized this opportunity to actually spend a lot of time outdoors, because we're still in Singapore. We get to go for, you know, exercise outdoors in the immediate neighborhood, as they call it. But anyways, you know, I haven't spent this much time outdoors like pretty much ever. So I go for walks and for runs and workouts and whatnot outdoors, which has been really great. So, you know, for me, it's now day 60 plus already, because we started the self-isolation already when MOM sent the first message, like, you know, guys, shift to remote work. But really hoping that things will change in 2 weeks when the circuit breaker is over.
Yeah. We're all hoping for that as well. It's nice to hear a very good perspective on how this whole circuit breaker has been on you, because one of the most common answers that I have been getting is not that it's a bad thing because people are actually expressing their own feelings, but most of it is actually negative, which is very sad to hear because that's the truth, right? How about you, Linda?
Yeah. I have to say at the beginning, I mean, when we first got the news of the lockdown, because Singapore was actually doing quite well at the beginning, and we didn't foresee that a lockdown was guaranteed. So I think at the beginning, when we first got the news, it was quite a, oh my God, like that first week, it was, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna reduce the bleed? How are we gonna stay in business? How are we gonna look after everyone? And you know, to be honest, it was very high on anxiety and low on sleep, just trying to figure things out and pivot really quickly. And within 5 days of getting the news, we launched our virtual classes, which is almost like launching a new studio. So that was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears and rally from the whole team to get that live. But I'm really glad that we did, and we're able to still be there through people's journey through this lockdown. So that has been really great, and I think I've been really grateful. The community has been so supportive of us, and you know, it's really through these times that we need the community the most, and they have been showing up for us and rallying for us, and hopefully we've been able to do that for them and be a little hour of sanity or me time or just a little bit of light, you know, amidst the crazy days that you have stuck at home with your family or whatever else you have to do. So business wise, I feel like we're doing the best we can. I mean, everyone's going to struggle business wise. I would say most people are going to struggle business wise. And if you're in an industry that you're okay, I mean, that's amazing. Personally, it's been quite weird because ironically, I'm very extroverted. I love being around people. I love being social, but I've actually liked the time being able to catch up on other things at home, because I guess I'm always someone that says yes to every meeting and, you know, meets all these people, and I don't prioritize myself as much. So I feel like during this time, it's been good to take a moment to just like read and meditate and just try to do all the things that I've been wanting to do that I haven't had the chance to do.
Yeah, I think I agree with what you and Laura actually shared with me. The world needs a break. We need a break as well. So this was one of those signs. Sometimes whenever this epidemic happens, that's when we realize what we actually are lacking and what we need the most, whether when it comes to health, whether it comes to diet, whether it comes to just ourselves. So I feel that this break, as much as it has taken a toll on a lot of the businesses out there, I don't think it has taken a toll on our well-being, an individual well-being perspective. I don't think it has. I think it's only going to get better, the times. And as well for us, it's going to be, I would say, it's a new me coming out during this COVID period. I would like to look at it that way. So, you know, moving on to our next point of the conversation, one of the main issues that I wanted to address for during this podcast is obviously the big topic, which is career switch. And we had this pre-discussion before this whole Zoom call, and I chose these two women specifically because of that. There are two issues that I want to address, which is basically women in tech in Asia, which is obviously Laura's going to speak a lot more about that. And Linda, you're going to be talking about career switch. Once you go on career switch, I would like to share a bit more about my journey as well, because I feel like I have a few inputs to actually add on. But tell me more about how you started off, Linda. Like, you know, you're from Australia. Most of your time spent on education would have had been there. What happened after that? You know, what were the obstacles that you encountered, and what made you make that switch?
Yeah, it's crazy. I still feel like I'm living a dream sometimes. I guess you have your whole life planned out and you think you're going to take this very predictable corporate climbing career, and then I still feel like it's so surreal that I have my own business. I've created my own brand. I'm able to pay myself a salary. Like, what? You know, all of that is just amazing. So yeah, I mean, I was in commerce. I majored in marketing. I studied in Monash, and I went on the generic route of starting in FMCG. So I went to P&G and I worked at Unilever, and I loved my job. I was in brand management. I felt like marketing had a hybrid of science and arts, and I was able to get the best of all worlds. And I had a great boss. I learned a lot during that time, which I have used now in my own business. So I did that for about 10 years. I did corporate for about 10 years. And I've always known I've wanted to do something on my own. I just didn't know what and when and how. So I guess all the stars aligned, and I say that because I felt like I was at the right point in my career, that I felt like my learning was slowing down and I wanted to look elsewhere. I was not earning enough money yet, so I could walk away from a salary and take no salary. I had saved an okay amount of money in my savings to invest all it into a business. And the rest of my life was relatively stable. So I didn't feel like I didn't have the capacity. Like I felt like I could deep dive into this and throw myself all in. So all those stars aligned, as well as the idea and meeting Annabelle, my business partner, at the same time. So I think I'm lucky that that was a clear that this was a path I wanted to dive into. And it's tough. It's a hustle life. I've never worked so hard in my life before until I started my own business. And I was in a multinational corporate company, which definitely worked as hard, but it's nothing when it comes to your own baby, where there is no lines. It's 24/7, and every dollar, every interaction, every potential possibility like really counts, and you just want to grab everything as it comes. There is no break and like, oh, I'm just gonna let this go, it's okay. But yeah, so I would say that was kind of how it felt like going from corporate to startup. But looking back 5 years in, I would have totally done the same thing again. I 100% love what I do. And what I'm going to end this answer with is what I love most about doing my own business is I feel now I can be me all the time. Like, I don't feel like I have to put a corporate hat on and then a out of corporate hat on. I feel like what I'm doing in my personal life, in my work life, is all delivering to that one purpose of empowering people around me to live a better, healthier, more confident life. And I just feel like I can genuinely and authentically be me, and doing that I can give so much more in what I do day to day.
Right. Oh, great. That's very beautiful the way you actually put it, where you can be authentically yourself. You don't have to put a corporate hat on. I think some of the points that I actually took note from your conversation, these are one of the common trends that I notice on people who actually decide to make the switch, which is learning or slowing down. That's definitely one thing. Making okay enough money. And also the part where you said, the part where you mentioned where you met Annabelle, and your stars just aligned to actually move towards the direction of opening the business. But I just wanted to dig a bit further on this, because that's what our viewers are for, right? Like some of the people, when they want to make a career switch, when would they know when their learning is slowing down? I know it's a very, I would put it in a millennial term, lame question to ask, us like learning is just slowing down. I mean, you just know, right? But the truth is, I wouldn't know. I've seen people who've been in the same thing, doing the same thing for 10 years, and they're just like, I don't know, just like that. I'm just in this eat, sleep, go to work, eat, sleep, go to work routine. And I guess, okay, when would they know that, no, I'm not learning anything new? Is there like a kind of a matrix that we can look at?
I think it's really your own personal appetite for learning and growth as well. I mean, some people are content doing the same role for many years, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think there's something really beautiful about contentment as well. But at that point, I was maybe in my late 20s, and I was still very hungry for more. And I knew that my learning had plateaued because I was looking at a switch in terms of moving overseas. So I was looking at going to a different market, like a third world market or a different category. So something quite different, because I had been in that same category for many years. And I guess I felt like, did it challenge me? Yes. I mean, it wasn't easy, but I wasn't really risking anything, or I didn't feel nervous. I didn't feel intimidated anymore. All those feelings that, you feel when you really care about something that is probably just outside of your reach, but it's going to really push you to grow. So I guess that was a feeling that I felt like was diminishing, and I didn't I guess feel as excited or alive to come to work. And I wanted to be like still pushed at that point in time, because like I said, the rest of my life was stable. I was still like, yes, I'm young. I'm like, I still have this appetite to grow and really push myself. So you can be 20 and have like less appetite to grow. You could be 50 and have a super appetite to grow. I mean, it doesn't really depend on age. I guess it's just really in that mindset and that moment of life that you're in, and what you want and what you want to go after.
I guess to summarize your conversation based on what made you actually decide to go when you realize that you're learning or slowing down. It really depends on personal appetite. Really, when you want to make a career switch, the first question you should be asking is, what is your appetite? You know, basically, what do you want to be 5 years from now? I think that's the question that you should ask yourself. I think it makes sense, makes a lot of sense. It's easy to say that I want to make the switch, but what exactly is your appetite? Where do you want to go? How far do you want to go? I think that's a question that you should ask yourself.
If I could just leave one more line with that, I think it's so important to have that goal of what you want. But what we miss out, I see more and more commonly, is the steps that it takes to get to that goal. So yes, you should know your appetite, but then what are the steps that are going to, you know, are you going to be working twice as hard? Are you going to be putting in more hours? Are you going to be having less money to spend day to day? Are you okay with all that to get to your bigger goal? And if not, then maybe you need to adjust your bigger goal as well. So
and I completely agree with you, because funny how I just read this book yesterday. The book was titled The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Dash.
Oh, I read that. Very good. Very good.
Exactly. The book said that a lot of people want to get there. They want to achieve the goals. They want to be a millionaire. They want to be, I don't know, they just want to be at a really high stage in their career. But nobody asks the question on what are you willing to lose? And that was literally the next question I was going to ask you, right? Like what were you, did you even had that impression? Did you even had that thought that, am I okay to lose this? Am I okay to lose that? But you did mention that, you know, you needed to have that level of investment that level of money in your bank to be able to start your own business. You should be able to have, you should be in a comfortable stage in your career where you can actually make the jump so that you can take care of yourself and take care of the business after. For me, if I were to share a little about my career journey, is that I started off as a medical technologist with a local government organization, which is National Healthcare Group Diagnostics. So I studied for it. My major was in microbiology. So I was working in the lab for 3 years before I decided to do events. I wanted to do medicine, but then obviously that didn't work out because my parents couldn't afford medical school. And I did my degree in Australia. So it kind of aligns exactly where we're delivering this content to as well. And right after that, you know, I loved Australia and I wanted to stay there, but I just realized, okay, maybe it's not going to work right now. So I decided to come back to Singapore, and I worked in the job that I studied for 3 years. And then right after that, I just didn't like it because, you know, medical school and medical technology is completely different things. So I decided, you know, I'm going to go and tap on my strength. But obviously it wasn't like what Linda mentioned. I didn't have a comfortable money in my in my bank account because I started work really early in my career. I was 22 at that point of time. So when I started my work, I was 22 and I was like, yeah, you know what, I'm going to do it. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? I took a pay cut from the 3 years that I was working. I took a complete pay cut. Like it was about $1,000 to $1,500 pay cut because I just wanted to move to the corporate world and tap on my strength, which was talking to people. So I got a job as an events coordinator at a big company that I'm not going to name. But what happened within 4 months into the industry is that I had a really bad relationship with my boss, and my boss told me to leave my job. She told me that maybe you're just not up to become an events planner. Maybe this job is not meant for you. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I remembered how I went to the toilet and I just cried. I cried and cried and cried. And then I called my dad out. I was just like, what am I going to do? I left my government job for this. And that was the period of time my husband proposed to me. My then boyfriend, now husband, proposed to me. And I was like, I need a wedding. I need a house. I am so young. I don't know what to do. I feel like I'm already having midlife crisis when I'm only like 23, 24. It was so crazy, right? And I was like, my whole life was crumbling down, as dramatic as it sounds. But really, at the point of time, I thought this was where my career is going to be. I'm going to be such a big shot in the events field. It's within 4 months into the job. But, shit happens, right? And then I was just like, screw it. I was so strong in not going back to the field that I studied for, because there's a reason why things happen. I wanted to make this work and I wasn't willing to take this as a failure. So I decided that, okay, I'm going to just apply for my competitor. And that's what I did. And I applied to my competitor, and it took me within a week of actually quitting my previous job. And yeah, here I am now. I'm about 3 years, about 2.5 years in the events industry, and I've enjoyed every event that I made. But what was the turning point for me was the time where I sat in the toilet and cried and felt like my life was crumbling down. And the fact that someone actually told me that you're not meant for this job. that's the turning point. When a person actually tells you that, hey, you're meant for something, that's when your heart actually seeks to find out that, hey, this is not true. I could have gone down the spiral whereby I'll be like, yeah, maybe this is not meant for me. Yeah, I tried it, I failed, so what? Now let's move on. But there's the part where also question you, but you're only 4 months into the job. What makes the other person think that you're not good at it? You yourself don't think that way. So don't let others define you that way. So that was my turning point, and that's how where I am now. Very happy with where I am now. I work with Ross. My team is at Fit Summit is amazing. You guys have attended our events as well. So I believe that that's just a bit of my career journey. And during a career switch, there will be a lot of people actually telling you maybe this is not for you. There will be so much of fears instilled. Like there will be so much of time where you will be so scared to do something. But really, the decisions that scare you, the experiences that scare you are the best ones. Like really the best ones. Yeah. So I think that's a bit about my career journey. Now let's go to Laura. So Laura, tell me more about your career journey and how you started off. I know you gave a bit of description in the start where you moved from Finland to Asia, and you've been here for 6 years. You work in a very male-dominated industry, if to be honest, and like I was talking to you guys before, when I walked into Laura's office for the first time, the only female that I saw was you. And I was like, okay, that's something. And like, the whole time that she actually explained about her company and the things that she do, I was like, wow, like she put it into such simple terms for me to understand, and that makes her why she's so successful in her industry. So tell me how it is like to be in this male dominated industry. We will continue part 2 of this conversation in the next series, but tell me more about how are you in this male dominated industry.
Yeah, for sure. So I think it started already at the university because my field of technology is my faculty was, I think 80% were guys. Is a very technical, very, I would say, sort of nerdy what I studied. So I kind of got used to this environment already in the very beginning. And I never kind of felt there was any difference whether I worked with guys or with girls. It was the same. But sort of entering the I would say the tech startup industry, that was definitely a surprise, because when I went to talk to investors in the beginning, when I had established my company, I had my initial team, I had the big idea, I had even built the prototype, most investors would say like, I actually invest in all male teams. And I was like, why? They were like, you're a mom in your early 30s, like, you see what's happening here. Like you're not able to invest 15 hours of your time daily into your startup, and you might get more children, and you females. It was so weird for me coming from Europe, where we're kind of super equal, and then entering Asia, where this tech industry is so male dominated. I was in shock in the beginning. I was like, wow, like it wasn't about the skills or the uniqueness of the idea. It was about my gender, which I thought was really horrific. But I think over the first 2 years, when I was talking to different investors, different stakeholders, potential customers, I kind of had to develop that Teflon coating. So I said to myself, like you said to yourself, Sara, if somebody doesn't like my idea, that's fine. If somebody thinks I'm not a good fit, that's fine. If some investor only wants to invest in male teams, that's fine as well. They're just not my kind of people. So I will just, have to be very persistent and keep talking to more people, and eventually I will find the right fit. Yeah. And I think what you mentioned, Linda, in the beginning, the learnings you get from the corporate world, those are really worth gold. Like I really admire the guys, the fresh grads who have their startups and then they get some government funding and whatnot, and then they kick off their ideas and the startup either fails in 6 months or whatever. But I think for us females in our 30s, it's a very different setting. We actually want to make something sustainable. We want to grow it in a sustainable manner. You know, when we, you know, the first paycheck, we probably wouldn't, you know, buy a car with that. We would actually try to save some of that first salary to, you know, sustain our life in the coming months in case the salary isn't coming up later on.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a very different setting. And in the startup world, you just have to, I would say, you have to know yourself. You have to accept that this is my situation. This is how I want to run my business. And that's kind of, if you're okay with that, then the haters are gonna hate. You can live with that. And then I would say eventually you will attract your kind of people, the right ones. And that's, I think, the rewarding part, when you first realize, like, oh, like I actually have a really great team. Like, I'm surrounded by people who believe in the same vision, the same mission, who are in this, like, equally committed to this thing as I am. And that's, I think that was super empowering, you know, when you have your first investors, advisors, and you kind of, it might be small wins, but still you kind of realize it's super powerful. You realize that this can actually become something. Because I would say for most people in the tech startup scene, it's quite depressing. The first 6 to 12 months, it's quite depressing. You get a lot of no's, hundreds of no's. But once you realize, you look at your situation and you realize, I actually have done some really super amazing things. I've gathered the right people, which is the core of it, because these are the people you're going to work with and build this amazing venture with. So I think that was the turning point for me.
Okay, I think what you said was amazing. The way you actually handled the male-dominated industry and how you resonated with what I said in regards to people, not everybody being your cup of tea, and but the fact that you said about how investors were actually not wanting to invest because you were in your 30s and wanting to actually have kids and, I mean, grow your family. Or, I mean, why is that even a reason for them to stop investing in you? Why is there such a stigma in the Asian community? I would love to talk more about that, but we're going to cut it short and we're going to actually move to our second part of our segment. So for now, let's move to our second part of our segment. I'll meet you guys there. Facing the problem of having to convince investors, especially in a male-dominated industry, which really moves on to my next question. Like, for those, now that we've already established on what is to be, what is the trigger point in your journey where you actually would consider a career switch, whether it is your appetite, whether it's your contentment within you, or whether if you're willing to actually face head on with the industry that you want to work in. The next question I want to ask is, what is to be expected during your first few months of career switch? I think this is the kind of topics that people don't actually address. Like, you know, we could say that, I mean, I don't know, like, you just gotta go and swim in the ocean. You either drown or you survive or you stay afloat. But really, if we could give an advice to our viewers in regards to finances, or even in regards to mentally preparing yourself on what's out there, what is to be expected in the first few months of career switch? Because I feel in every industry there should be a commonality. I think, Laura, maybe you can start. You can follow through to whatever you were mentioning before.
Yeah, for sure. So like Linda mentioned, which was an excellent advice, be financially prepared. You're not gonna, I cannot say you're not gonna get a salary, but the odds of you getting a salary in the first few months are very slim, unless you jump into this having an entire suite of investors who love your idea even before it was born. But I would say be realistic. It's, just looking at the statistics, most startups are going to fail in the first 2 years. That's just, the brutal fact. And thus, I would say, get the experience from the corporate world on sort of how to run a company, how to lead a team, how to sort of deliver when you have deadlines. Because these things, if you start learning by heart in your first own company, it's going to bite back. Like, you're going to run into serious issues And I would say, especially in Asia, it's all about reputation. You don't want to sort of get the bad reputation in the beginning of as the person who doesn't, for example, deliver. You know, you're selling, and you get some great deals, and then you're unable to execute and deliver. So that's kind of get the experience from somewhere else. Be financially prepared to the fact that you know, it takes time to generate revenue and to be able to pay yourself, because first you're going to pay your team, those people who are investing their time and energy and everything into your company, and you're the last one on the list. So if there's any scraps left, you get it. But that's one thing. And I would say prepare to lose all your free time. This is going to be your baby. Like Linda mentioned, it's, you know, in the corporate world, you have your paid coffee breaks, you have the nice corporate perks and benefits. And if you travel for work, you know, you get to stay in nice hotels. Now, this is the couch surfing season. If you need to travel to conferences or events or whatnot, you're selling overseas, you're going to be staying at friends and, you know, sleeping on their couch, and you're going to eat cheap food, because it's really difficult to justify the spend of money on such things in the beginning before the big revenues. So just be mentally prepared. You're going to have a switch in lifestyle. Probably going to, let's say, if you live in Singapore, where people tend to travel quite a bit, you're going to be traveling less. You're going to be sort of spending every minute of your free time with your baby, aka your business, because you actually want to make it successful. And if you both have read Elon's latest book, he's a total workaholic, and I think it's not sustainable the way he works. He's just an animal. But the lessons from that book is that you really, like, if you want to do something amazing, you have to be so
what
invested.
book was it again? I didn't get
Elon Musk's latest book.
Okay.
I just listened to it now during the lockdown, because, you know, we have some free time, and I go for a lot of runs outdoors, so good to listen to something. But it's just about the morale. Like that guy, he has such a strong belief in his companies and the brighter future, that he's investing like all his free time. He's barely sleeping. So that I would not recommend to any entrepreneur. Make sure you sleep well, make sure you exercise, make sure you eat good food. It doesn't have to be expensive, fancy food, but just, you know, nutritious and the one that keeps you going. But sort of expect to have so much work ahead of you, because you're going to fill in all the roles that are missing in your team. So as the founder and CEO, you're going to be also the janitor, the coffee lady, the lunch person. You're going to be the entertainment center for your team, and you're going to do everything from, you know, checking the bookkeeping and finances and everything. So you're going to be wearing many hats, and you're going to work super tirelessly, so that you're going to be I wouldn't say poor, but you're going to need to adjust your lifestyle and then invest a lot of time in your venture. So that would be the two major ones that you're going to face in the first few months.
Got it. I think the 2 points that I got from your sharing us, that obviously the first thing is you got to be financially prepared, and you also have to have the experience of execution. I think that's the 2 major points that hit me and felt like, you know, this is something that we could bring home message. I think, Linda, like, if you could, like I mentioned, like, what must you be, you've shared a bit about your career journey, and you've shared a bit about what you had to go through and what you obviously had to sacrifice, but if you could just name 5 things out of your head, like, what is the 5 things that must you be willing to sacrifice?
That's a good question. To have your own startup, you mean?
Yes.
Okay, 5 things you must be willing to sacrifice. Okay, maybe let's not say sacrifice, but let's say adapt. Okay, you must be adaptable with.
It's a positive way to look at it.
So definitely time, work time, personal time, free time. Having to think about creative ways to get things done that were a lot easier before. So simple things like going to the mail room, which is 2 levels down, to put a mail in the post box, was so much easier. Now I have to spend almost half an hour to go to the mail office, buy a stamp, buy an envelope. I mean, it's small, but it's something you really took for granted. Even like an ergonomic chair that I can work from, I don't have that anymore. I mean, all those little things. So I guess be creative about how to get things done. Financially, for sure, like Laura said, whether that's eating cheap meals or whether that's, you know, not being able to buy like something expensive that you wanted, and being able to be really smart and frugal with your money so that you're able to kind of withstand the months of no income, which could be, you know, X amount of months. Okay, so that was time, creativity on doing things,
And being
money.
financially ready.
Yeah, being financially ready. Headspace. Okay, we didn't talk about this, but like in my first 2 years of doing my own business, I had no headspace for, like, I felt like I was just always, just the cogs were just always going. I didn't have an hour where I could just sit there and just veg out. Like, and it sounds silly, but you know, it was in my third year that I was like, this is not sustainable, and I'm not feeding my own soul, I'm not feeding my own mind and body, and I needed to take a more sustainable route in balancing out my life. So I think headspace and like, and how much room you have for other things in your life is going to be different. And stability, you don't have stability anymore. Yeah, so whether that's in the salary, which you might or might not get, your calendar day to day might change, issues that may come up that you might not even realize may come up. So yeah, so I guess that would be my 5 points. But I guess the theme that if I look at those 5 points, it would just be like being really creative, like having that hustler mentality in terms of being creative, not using too much resources to get something that you want, being really efficient and effective with your time, because that's going to be scarce, and finding some sort of balance that will allow you to live a sustainable day-to-day life, even though it's going to be crazier, right? So finding those pockets of maybe like 10 minutes of meditation or something that will help just fuel you and keep you sane as you're working on overdrive, would be my takeaways.
Amazing how you put together 5 things, because I feel like what we could like go into is like, people like to hear life stories, people like to resonate with life stories, like what Laura shared, right? Like, it's amazing. And but Laura also managed to actually summarize it into 2 points that you had to be a giveaway. And I feel like when people listen to content, what they want to hear is that I lean on with your life story, I can learn a lot, but what would really get to me is the points that you laid out. So the 5 points that you mentioned about financial stability, about alignment, about headspace, which is really important. And I completely agree with you. I think one of my last questions before we end this segment is that I would say 2 last questions, and quick one, like a quick summary on what you guys think, because I feel like it's a stigma in the Asian community, especially when we hear people say women are not great bosses. I'm sure you guys have heard it, and you know, it's the first thing my parents actually asked me, like, okay, so who's your boss? Is it a man or a guy, like a female? And it never comes during the first conversation. It always comes in the middle when I'm like halfway through my job, like how about 2 years or maybe 6 months, and then I'll be like, you know, my boss is like that, and then they'll be like, so who's your boss? Is it a male or female? And then I'm like, but why does it even matter? Like, why no, like, you know, males have it easier, females, you know, they kind of show their PMS on you, they kind of show their pregnancy on you. No, let's be raw here, right? Like, that's the kind of things that I hear as a millennial. And so, like, what is your take on women are not great bosses? Like, Linda, you go first. Like if you could summarize it, like, what is your take on it? Why do you think people are feeling this way, and why do you think people shouldn't feel this way?
I mean, people who think that way are just probably very traditional in their mindset, in their perspective of business in corporate. And I guess if you look at 30, 40, 50 years ago, it was more men dominating leadership roles, management roles. So that is just what they're used to. And some people are more comfortable recognizing what they're used to than something that's different. But I work in a 98% dominated female company. I mean, everyone is female.
Yeah.
So definitely there are things that have to be more sensitive and aware about. I mean, you know, girls and yes, like time of the month, and, you know, being a bit more aware or feeling like emotions a little bit more raw than guys do. You know, that is a difference between men and women. So the way I communicate or the way I give feedback is adapted based on who it is. In saying that, I wouldn't say it's a gender specific, but it's more of who that person is. I think as a leader, as a woman, you have this the strength of instinctually just being more emotionally aware, and that is so powerful if you are able to tune into that and let that be a strength or a way to see and appreciate and feedback and communicate and lead your team. And that is something that I guess if you look at back in the 8 days of guys and girls, is not an instinctual trait of a man, right? But more and more so nowadays, they can definitely be. I think more and more so, there is so much information out there. We don't have to go back to what instinctually we're meant to be good at, but we could improve ourselves and be better at something that we're not good at. But as a woman leader, I feel that my strength is that emotional awareness. And some might see it as a weakness, but I feel that it allows me to adapt my leadership style differently to different people that I work with, guy or girl. It could be stakeholder or employee. And that helps me be able to empower them in a way that I feel like resonates with them. So they feel like they are seen and that they are heard. Because at the end of the day, I feel they just want to be engaged. Like your employee wants to be seen and heard and engaged. They want to know that you care enough about, yes, the work they're producing, but also about their overall well-being. And I guess that is the way I look at every employee, and at the same time being fair and bring it back to the values of the entire company. So, making sure that we're able to support them in their own dreams and also the company's overall purpose. And if I can do that and make them feel seen and heard and appreciated along the way, I think that is a win. And that's how I lead as a woman. I mean, that's just how I've always loved and been very curious about leading. So I read a lot of books on that. I watch a lot of podcasts. Brene Brown, amazing. I'm reading Daring Greatly right now, which is all about leading with vulnerability. And I think that is so powerful. And there is less and less of a stigma now around vulnerability becoming a strength versus becoming a weakness.
Okay, I'm not too sure why Laura got locked out of it, but that's okay because I think you explained it really really beautifully about how, like, because you're in a very women dominated industry as well, especially when it considers bar, and you have to deal with more women, right? And you've also worked in a corporate where there was men alongside with you as well, and obviously there was a difference. And like what you said, like women are full of strength and the ability to lead and the ability to succeed and the ability to be able to go through every obstacle, because as a woman, emotionally we are stronger than men. And like, I'm not here to say that we're better than men. No, we're not. But it is scientifically proven that we are physically not as strong as men, which is true. And mentally we are stronger than men, which is the truth. We're not here to say, we're not here to have such anti-feminist conversations or feminist conversations saying that we're great. But we're here to say that there shouldn't be that stigma, that we should be given the opportunity to just watch how we actually lead and succeed. I loved how you actually put it. Like, last question before we end this, and then I'll go back to chase Laura on what she went missing. What would be your advice to your 18-year-old self? 18-year-old Linda.
I would say 18 to all the way probably to my late 20s. I would give the same advice.
Let's be raw here. Like, be it relationship, be it business, be it just like anything. Like, just be raw with me.
People look at me and they think that I'm very confident, or people have that, I guess, perception of me. But in my 20s, I would say that I had a lot of insecurities, a lot. And whether that's the way I looked, or like the way I was dressed, or how people saw me, I cared a lot about how people saw me. And I think that is probably the Asianness in me. I cared a lot about what other people thought and living up to expectations and being the best version, or just perfect in general, right? The absolute perfect that I could be. And I would say that made me like not in the most healthy mindset with myself. Like, I don't think I loved myself. I don't think I embraced myself, and I don't feel like I celebrated all my strengths, flaws, and ugly, like all the in-betweens. I didn't celebrate all of that. Whereas now I feel I really recognize and embrace every part of me. Not to say I'm perfect, but that, the strengths and the weaknesses and the flaws, like they all make me imperfectly perfect. And if I could give advice to my younger self, it would be to care less about people who didn't matter as much. Yes, care about what people matter to you. Like, your family, your teachers, your close friends, people who you know want the best for you, care about what they say. But people who you probably haven't seen in like a decade, or people who are just there for other reasons, you know, care less about those people and focus more in about, yeah, I mean, feeding your own strengths and being aware of your flaws and just embracing all of that. And it's, you know, to improve on what you want to be better at, but not to also, I guess, hide or be embarrassed or be insecure about those areas that maybe you aren't naturally good at. And it's okay.
Thank you so much, Linda. I think it was very beautiful. I mean, I would say sadly it is an Asian mentality, and I have to agree on that. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'll go back to Laura to ask the questions that I asked you as well, the final two questions. But thank you so much, Linda, for joining us.
Thank you.
You know, for anybody who's watching, WeBar has launched their virtual classes, and it's amazing, amazing, amazing. I've tried it, tested it. I can't go without my week having at least 2 to 3 times a week. So please join. I will actually attach the link to the email that I send to the people who have registered for the podcast to actually join your virtual classes. And thank you so much, Linda.
Thank you.
Enjoy class.
Thank you. I'm going to head off to teach a class, but so nice chatting with Sarah and Laura and sharing with everyone. And I hope that was useful. Okay, see you guys soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, Laura. It's okay. You know, technical issues instead.
Yes, internet disappeared, Wi-Fi crashed.
It's okay. It's okay. I will basically like, I think the way we flow, like I'll edit this part of the video, and then after that I'll join it back with when you joined in. I think the last two questions that I asked to Linda was, women are not great bosses, and you know, you were listening to her take on it, and why do you feel there's an Asian mentality to it? Linda is an Australian born Chinese, but you are from Finland, and obviously you being shocked into this whole industry, that must be some form of tsunami to you. So how exactly do you think it's different from Finland, especially in Asia, and what do you think we can do better?
Yeah, for sure. I've been surprised with the culture of women actually being allowed to, you know, like you mentioned in the beginning, the PMS and, you know, emotionally unstableness and whatever that might be. I've been surprised to actually see that this is the reality. Yeah. Some females over here that I've met, they actually use those cards, like, you know, the PMS or the period card, or the card that, you know, oh, my kid is sick, so I'm going to bail out on this project and leave everything to my team. I'm going to leave my team in trouble with this kind of, I would say, issue that should not, you know, it shouldn't be used in this way. And I think that's strengthening the stigma of you know, people thinking that women might be bad bosses because they are these unstable creatures who might come up with issues, let it be with their children or their hormones or whatever, and then they're going to bail out. And I think the bailing out part is the big issue, because if your team realizes that you're going to leave them in trouble for reasons that, you know, your all male team could not even comprehend, that's going to be a really bad thing. Yeah. But like Linda mentioned, I think the strength for women is definitely on the emotional intelligence side. So like we're able to sense the people around us. And I would say many of the females I know are super good at multitasking, which is a great quality for a boss. So you kind of, you're able to multitask, think about a lot of things in creative ways, and you can tune in and out of different situations and conversations. And I think the third point that makes women great bosses is also I would say, hold on, I had 1, 2, 3. I had a third point. I'm kind of losing it.
No worries. I think the part because you were not in this video, but it's so funny because I actually said that to Linda just now. I said it to her that, you know, we might just, you know, it's scientifically proven that we are not physically strong. Like men are physically stronger than us. That's fine. No one's going to debate about that. But
Yeah.
it is also scientifically proven that women are mentally and emotionally stronger than men. And that's the point that you actually addressed about us being emotionally intelligent, and the kind of things that we can bring to the table are far more fetched than us just being labeled as women are not great bosses.
Yeah. And now I just remembered my last point, which is that we don't have the ego issue. Because so many of the guys, when they
Amen,
enter
sister.
workforce, they have so much to prove. And they have their buddies who just get a big raise and a new position and whatever perks, and they think, oh, now I'm the boss. I need to show up to my buddies, to my parents, to
Agreed.
the entire world, and their ego is sort of begging for that kind of acknowledgement. And I think that will definitely have a huge impact on the sort of the mood in the team. Because if one person in the team has so much to sort of has a very small ego that needs a lot of strengthening, that is a learning experience that the entire team will definitely feel. And I think for females, because like we talked about earlier in the conversation, we talked about sacrificing quite a lot. And I think especially for females, if you have kids, you have to come terms into the fact that you're not going to see your kids as much if you're running your own business. Once you sort of decide to commit to that, be the boss, you are super heavily invested in that. You're super committed. And I think that will make you a great boss, because the sacrifice for you was quite massive compared to many of the guys, especially in Asia, because the roles, like for example, in Scandinavia, where I'm from, the maternity and paternity leaves, they're pretty much equal. So guys would take equally much of leave as females, whereas over here in Asia, that's not the case. And I think
3 weeks versus 6 months, I think. 9 months. I don't know.
So, it's quite different, yeah. And over here with domestic helpers and that kind of stuff, guys are not forced to sort of take a lot of responsibility in the household. Agreed. It's amazing. I know many guys who are amazing dads and spouses and whatnot, so they're really 50-50 with their spouses as when it comes to the household stuff. But over here it's kind of easy to sort of let it go, just focus on the career, put your everything into it, and this is for the guys. Whereas for the women over here, they still have the motherly duties and the meta work related to the kids' school and whatever. You have so many things to do, and I think if you are willing to sacrifice that and be the boss, that's really a crazy investment of your time and your comfort in many ways. So you will be an amazing boss, because you're not doing it just for the salary or for the ego or for the title or whatever. You're doing it because you actually really care.
Agreed. I agree with you. I think, like, in a nutshell, what you're saying is that we shouldn't be judged based on what we actually what we actually bring forward, or the kind of myths that we hear about women having physicality issues, or women actually complaining about PMS, or even talking about taking care of children. Because, to be very honest, the root of the issue is the fact that in an Asian culture, the responsibility of taking care of a child has always been directed towards a mom or a female figure, whether it's a domestic maid, or whether it's a domestic helper, whether it's a domestic whether it's your parents or grandparents or even your mom or anybody. It's always a female figure involved. And so because of that, and also the point that you brought across, like, I've never looked at it that way, but like the fact that you said the paternity leave and the maternity leave is completely different, and that segregation is enough to show that the kind of equal responsibility in taking care of a child, which is a completely different topic, but like really that also adds on to why there has been the stigma of women are not great bosses, because of such rules by the corporates and because of the many stories that has been told over the years. I feel that now the women leaders are coming up, there are more women leaders taking up C-suite positions like yourself, and like going through the different hurdles and obstacles. I feel that this mindset has to change within the Asian mentality. It will change, hopefully. We'll just have to see from 5 years from now and see, like, look at the stats and be like, maybe, who knows, right? In time to come, there might be just equal maternity and paternity leave in especially in Singapore. We can only wish. I think the last question that I ended off with Linda, and I'm going to end off with you, is that what would be the advice to 18-year-old Laura? Be it, I want you to
Wow.
be, I want you to be raw as possible. Be it
Mm-hmm.
relationship, be it business, be it just yourself, right?
Yeah.
What is it? What is the advice that you would give?
Um, I would definitely tell my 18-year-old self to believe in myself and in my dreams, because ultimately anything is possible. You know, let it be you moving overseas, or doing something completely unexpected. You might encounter huge pressure from your peers and your parents and from the society. Like, for example, if you studied something like you did, Sarah, and then you ended up doing events instead, so you just did a complete career shift, and I'm sure you encountered so much pressure, like, why aren't you sticking to the path that was shown to you? So I would say following your kind of internal voice, it's super important. But that said, it's also really important to be humble and go and learn in all the organizations before you actually do that huge jump, because that will really help you to deal with the hurdles and struggles and whatever. So try to learn in other organizations, and then all those refined, beautiful skills you can bring into your own venture. And then the third advice that I would give is definitely being kind. So that goes a long way. Like, whatever connections you make along the way, let it be in your first job as an ice cream vendor, or as a sales clerk, or whatever it might be. It might feel very mundane, but sort of the feel you leave with people that you come across doing all those different jobs and career paths. I think it's really important to sort of always be kind, because you never know when you're going to cross paths with these people in later in life. And it might be that they become your future investors or your future customers or whoever. And if you're not sort of kind and treat all people with great respect, that will bite back, definitely.
Okay. Thank you so much, Laura. Thank you so much for joining me today. I had such a good time, and it was such a feel-good conversation in the morning. I know we tackled about issues about career switch, career journey, what is to be expected during our first few weeks of career switch, and what would you tell people like, what would you tell to your 18-year self, and especially for you, women in tech. We've had this conversation the last time, and now we're having it, and you mentioned about how you actually managed to progress through so I would say so diligently and effortlessly, as much as it was not there was so much of effort that was being put in being actually surviving in a male dominated industry. I learned so much. Thank you so much for joining me and agreeing to this podcast. And yeah, like, thank you so much. Like, I really
Thank you
appreciate
so
that
much
you,
for
you took so
having
much of
me.
time from your busy schedule to actually allow me to interview you on this.